Miss 12. How's homework going for you now?
It's been pretty good. I kind of caught it, but I still need last week's and that's it. But the other ones are finished.
Yeah,
The
looks
ones
like
before
you're doing
that.
pretty good. Everyone's doing pretty good.
Yeah. When is the semester over? Like the date?
Uh,
So I know when.
December 12,
Oh, really?
something like that.
Also have like 2-3 weeks, right?
Yeah.
2,
Yeah.
3, 4 weeks.
And then our final is on week 16. This is week 12.
Week 16.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, there'll only really be, a class presentation, 12, 13, 14, 15. 16 would just be take your exam.
Okay. So
It's really only 4. We're waiting for one more person to join on Zoom. You get a chance to experiment with a Zoom record thing at all?
No, I haven't. I have my tutor though, because mine's a Chromebook,
Hmm?
the computer, but they have the other computers like yours. So I'm gonna go down there today. It's like at the public library in Watsonville, but next to it. It's like a tutoring group.
Okay.
And he's gonna help me today. Yeah,
Yeah.
because he's there Mondays and Wednesdays, so I'll have to go down there. But it shouldn't be that hard, right? Like, no.
Hard. Only hard thing is getting the lighting work good.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Amy's here. Now we can start. All right, let's get going. So it's week 12. Getting close to the end. Week 16 is the end, so give you an idea. So what we're doing in this module is we're going to look at email. So basically, we're transitioning into the short messages, electronic messages. So this week is email. And then also we're going to look at PowerPoint, how to use PowerPoint, so that you can get kind of started on your slides for your presentation project. And then there's exam number 2 for this week. I know it seems like these quizzes and exams keep coming, but that's the pace we're at. And we're going to have a little study thing for exam 2, which we will do in class. Okay. Also, I think I have figured out the whole recording thing. And so I'm recording this class and we'll see how that goes. I'll post it up later today. All right, so going over the reading assignment. So I don't need to tell you guys this, but yes, everything's kind of gone to the phone, right? So you might think that everything's instant messaging, Slack, all that kind of stuff. But email still lives on and will still live on. So let's talk about the cloud for a second. You know, all these applications are in the cloud now as well. And people always ask me, what does that mean? All cloud means it's a marketing term made up by a bunch of marketing guys. It just means it's on somebody else's computer. And it's nothing new. We've been doing this for 30 years or more. They just came up with a nice sounding word for it. So when you send something to the cloud or using an application that's, you know, in the cloud, you got to worry about security issues. You know, be careful sending things up to the cloud that might be secure data. The other thing to be aware of is what a VPN is. So I'll just give you kind of a short historical thing. Back in the day before we had VPNs, if you wanted to connect, say, your central office computer to some branch office computer, you had to go to the phone company and lease a line, meaning a physical wire phone line had to be connected by the phone company from your main computer to your branch computer 24/7. It was very expensive. But then, you know, the internet happened and everything, and now using encryption technologies, you can make that a virtual wire by using the existing infrastructure of the internet, all those routers and everything. So it really doesn't cost you anything. And you use encryption to have a virtual tunnel through the existing internet. So that's what a VPN is. So it's another way to get some security and some obfuscation if you're trying to, for example, you're in China and you're trying to browse the web and the Great Wall of China is blocking you out. You can use a VPN to come in as if you're from Europe. So like I said, yeah, you may think email, that's obsolete. Not really. If email is obsolete, why do I get 200 emails a day? It's still growing 4% a year. I get more than 120 messages a day, so I guess I'm above average. So we're going to dive into this in more detail, but there are certain reasons why email is still a preferred medium over other newer types of communication. It's not without its problems, though, as we all know. Email messages can be confusing and poorly written. Again, we'll get into this in more detail, but because people want to answer in the moment, they kind of treat it like instant message, but it isn't. You should take your time and write just like you write every other kind of business communication. Use the 3x3 process, proofread, all that stuff. Yeah, we're getting 120 emails by average, so that's a lot of emails. How do we go through that? I'm going to give you some strategies for handling your inbox. The 24/7 online thing. Yeah, it's real. I'm going to give you some strategies to cope with that. And then I'm also going to talk about how the permanence of email goes way beyond what you might expect. And we've talked about this earlier when we talked about business letters and how it differed from email. And we're going to get into this again in more depth, but your business email isn't yours. You don't own it. You have no expectation of privacy there. The employer owns that, and they can do whatever they want with it. You need to be aware of that. This was a really interesting stat for me. Estimates suggest that almost 30% of bosses have fired an employee for internet or email-related abuse. Wow, that's huge. So let's try to make that not happen. We'll go through some strategies for that as well. Okay, so if email is still a thing, when is it appropriate? Yeah, these days, you know, instant messaging and chat, text messaging kind of has taken over, but email is still appropriate if it's a longer, more involved message. Even though you can use things like Slack or whatever to sort of broadcast out, text messages, if you're really sending to a lot of people, email is probably still the preferred way. Messages that must be archived, although, you know, for example, if you're in a legal firm, all of your text messaging is also archived. That stuff is used in lawsuits. And then, you know, attachments, cover documents, things like that. Email is still the preferred medium for that. So when not to use it. So email is not a substitute for face-to-face or telephone calls. We'll see when you should really try to get on the phone or try to get a hold of a person face-to-face. You know, all those all those verbal communication things that, you know, facial expressions, tone of voice, all that stuff, you lose that in email. So those would be reasons to do a telephone call. And even telephone call, we're using that loosely. That could be a, you know, computer-based IP phone kind of thing. Here's another stat I was surprised for. People are 34 times more likely to comply with in-person requests than those sent by email. So if you're sending somebody email over and over again and you're not getting through, maybe it's time to go knock on the door. The subject line is super important. We're going to get into this again in detail because it could mean the difference between your email even being ignored or read. Like business letters, we have salutation, we have the bodies. But again, this is the same business writing that we've been doing. There's nothing really different about the writing itself in an email. You still have the topic sentence, the supporting sentence, the concluding sentence. Right, so some strategies to cope with the glut of email. So what a lot of people, including myself, suggest is don't treat it like instant messaging. Do it in batches. Only check your email 2 to 3 times a day. Do I do this religiously? No, but it's a goal I try to get to. All those dings and you have mail and all that stuff, turn it off. We're going to talk about how there should not be an expectation of instant messaging when you're sending emails. We're going to talk about down editing. The down editing, we don't mention it here, but it's the opposite of top editing. So top editing is what you would think you normally do in email. You know, hit reply, and the original message is below, and you add your message on top. But sometimes down editing is more efficient. That's where you keep the replied message on top and you insert your replies inside that original message. We'll see an example of that. Okay, so that's the reading. So now let's get into some more detail. So I'm just going to kind of reiterate a few points that I think are important here. Like I said, you may think the email is obsolete, but it isn't. Even, I don't know if you guys even know what Slack is. Slack is a application. It's an instant messaging application that a lot of companies use, where you can have groups of people for certain topics that you can message and it will broadcast out to them. And it does a whole bunch of other things, but it's basically like text messaging on steroids. And sure, we acknowledge the email has problems, but right now there's no other medium that does some of the things it can do. Okay, this is super important. If you only take one takeaway out of this, this is the one I want you to take away. I want you to pretend, even though technically they're not different, I want you to pretend that personal email and business email as if they're two completely separate systems that can't interoperate. All right, like I said, that's not true, but I want you to pretend that's true. Right? You never mix one with the other. In this class, we're only going to talk about your business emails, okay? Remember back when we talked about business letters, that confidentiality can be a concern with digital channels in general, including email. Just make sure that you're not emailing or forwarding any email that might contain confidential information. And HIPAA is the main one I'm thinking of here. That's the, what does it stand for? Health Information Privacy Protection Act, right? So any medical, anything like that. Let's get Elise in here. And again, back when we were doing business letters, we talked about confidentiality, that you don't, as far as your business email, you don't own it. It doesn't belong to you, right? Your company is setting you up and letting you use it on their behalf. Other people in the business organization can read your email, delete those emails. They're saved. They can be used as evidence in court cases. They have a permanence that goes way beyond what you might expect. Once they get out, they get circulated, they get saved. So in practice, emails are forever. So when you send something, keep that in mind. You're sending something forever. Also, like I mentioned, there's nothing, as far as the writing aspect of email, there's nothing different between writing for an email and any other kind of business writing. We're going to use the same techniques. We're going to use all the things we've learned. So yeah, email is different from, you know, a phone message or face-to-face, in that you lose those verbal cues and facial expressions that, I forgot what the statistic was, but it was alarming how much, what percentage of the information we get out of the communication channel over these verbal and facial cues. It's amazing. So email loses out on that. We don't get those. And so email is often a source of confusion, anger, because you're not being 100% clear. In fact, emojis were invented for this reason. If you were making a joke, you wanted to put the little emoji in there to make sure people understood. That's a joke, right? Because you don't get the verbal or facial cues. So yeah, try to convey your meaning without needing to read between the lines, right? Make it very clear what you're saying. Maybe more so than you would in other kinds of writing. Pause before you send. So it'll happen to you in your business life. You're going to get an email and it's going to upset you emotionally. It's going to make you angry, or it's going to make you sad. All I'm saying is don't reply right then while you're in the moment, right? Take a break, even a day before you compose your response. Emails forever, and there's no take backsies. Once you hit send, it's done. It cannot be pulled back. There are ways, but chances of it happening are nil. And then my last comment on this slide is there's a 99.9% chance that you do not need to reply all to any email. It should be the rare exception that you need to reply all. Right, so we talked about strategies to manage your inbox, and one of them was batching it up, doing it in spurts later. So that means that email isn't instant. It's not instant messaging. There should be no expectation, even though I still get emails almost every day. Hey, there's going to be a meeting in 20 minutes. That is an unreasonable expectation from someone sending an email. 24 hours is the expectation. If you need something faster than that, you better call them, or if you can text them, do that. But not every recipient's going to be willing to give you their phone number for texting or IM. So, you know, you're going to have to bake this 24-hour delay into whatever schedule you're operating on. So that was emails not instant from the sending perspective. This is from the receiving perspective. few times in the course, I've talked about this flow state that you get in when you're working on something. So the enemy of that flow state is when you have to switch context back and forth all the time. So you want to resist the urge to reply to an email as soon as it comes in. You know you're going to get that little beep or that little window pop up that you got an email. If you can turn it off, please do. Ignore it. You want to handle your emails in batches at specific intervals throughout the day, maybe 3 times a day, whatever works for you. Certain techniques that you can use to manage that is triage, meaning you look at the email, you decide, can I handle this now? A rule of thumb is like, if you can do it in under 2 minutes, do it now. That's the touch paper once thing. That's an efficiency experts thing. Try to only touch paper once, right? Don't keep moving it from one side of your desk to the other. So it's not paper here, email, but same kind of idea. If it's going to take you longer than 2 minutes, then decide if you're going to delegate it, delete it, maybe a phone call instead. And part of this email is not instant thing is you're going to take your time to compose your response because you're going to use the 3x3. You're going to, evaluate the audience, adapt your message, all those things that we learned. And that's going to take a little time. So don't just hammer out the reply in the moment. Okay, so let's talk about the format of email. When we talked about business letters, it was very formal, right? There was a ceremony, you say, in doing a letter, business letter, very strict rules. Not so much on email, but generally they'll still have the same kind of 6 things. They'll have the header, which is required for the email program to even know what to do with it. The to, the from, the CC, and the BCC. Do we know the difference between CC and BCC? CC is carbon copy. Wow, that's an anachronism, right? Carbon paper from typewriters. And BCC is blind carbon copy. So if you're sending to a person and you want to include a few other people, and you want everybody to know that you've included these people, that's the CC. But if you want to include people and you don't want it clear or obvious to the 2 person that you've included these other people, that's a BCC. So there might be political reasons for a particular email that you want to use the BCC instead of the CC. One common use is if you're blasting something out to some kind of a list. It's kind of rude to give everybody else out there the emails of all the people that you're including on this thing, so you can use BCC. We talked about how your subject line is pretty important for an email because it can make the difference between being read or not. So it should be compelling but concise. We're going to get into detail on that. It has a greeting, a salutation, but it's much more or less formal. You can use a comma or a colon with that. Then you have your body, again, normal business writing, organized for readability and tone. And you have a closing, which for email more than business letters is often a call to action. You're asking, can you do this for me, right? And then there's a signature, which can be automated via a signature file. A signature file is a file that is used by your email program, whether that be Microsoft or Apple or whatever using Gmail. They all have a facility where you can set up a signature file with your name and your position. Hang on a sec. What that was about, but there's 100 people out there walking by. Yeah, so you can set up this signature file, and then that's automatically appended to all your emails. Okay, so here's an example of format of an email. I don't think there's anything earth-shattering here. Here's the header, subject line, the greeting, the body, closing, and then the signature block. Yeah, so that subject line is pretty important for an email. Needs to be concise, specific, and compelling. State that action. If you're doing a call to action and it's important, you might try to put it right in the subject line. And you know how you can mark emails urgent or even say urgent as a subject? Well, if you do that a lot, you're going to be considered like the person who cries wolf. And after a while, people will be like, they mark everything urgent. I'm not even going to read this thing, right? So keep it for when truly necessary. And avoid meaningless statements just by themselves. I get this still maybe 10 times a day. Things that just say help or urgent or meeting. Like I need more than that to know if I want to even read this email. Okay, as we all know, you can put attachments on emails. You can attach files. So here's just some sort of nice things to do with attachments. Let's say, you were sent some contract and you had to print it out and sign it, scan it, and return it. I mean, that is a super common thing we do, right? Well, when you scan it, the scanner software is probably just going to make up a file name like scan4236.pdf. And you can just attach that to your email, but it's not very clear to the receiver of what the heck is this. So it's a good idea before you do your attachments to rename the files to something that makes a little bit more sense, like signed contract. I often put my name in there too, because, they may be getting contracts from 47 different people. I don't want it to get mixed up with somebody else's. So I'll say like signed contract, D Strong. Right? And another nice thing to do is if you have more than one, I would say, maybe more than two even, you might want to put a little section, sort of like the enclosures in the business letter. You might put a little section at the end of your email with just attachments and just giving a list of their file names and what the heck it is. Okay, and we talked about the down editing. So this is an example of down editing. You don't have to do this, but it often can be a time saver from your perspective and clearer to the receiver, right? So what you do is you do the reply. It will put in the existing email that you're replying to. You want to edit that down, get rid of anything from the original email that's not important for your down editing, just the things that you're going to comment on, right? And then you will say something like, please see my responses below. And then this would be like part of the original email that you're replying to. And then you put your response or question or whatever it is right under that. In the old days, we used to put greater than signs in front of our down edits. But that was before we had, formatted emails, the MIME extension stuff. So now that you can have, colors and font types and stuff, it's more clear to just use a different color. So here I'm using red. So this way they get the context of the question that they originally asked and then your response or your further questions, right? So a few etiquette things. So I mentioned that emails not instant shouldn't be considered instant, and 24 hours should be the expectation for response. Well, if it's going to take you more than 24 hours for whatever reason, you might just want to send a quick, I got your email, I'll get back to you tomorrow or Wednesday or whatever you're going to say, right? Just so they know that you got the email. Now, if you're not going to be handling emails for a really extended period of time, like you went on vacation or something, you want to turn on the out of office automatic replies, and all email systems have this. They all do it a little bit differently, but I'm sure you've seen these. It'll send back what I said to do up here automatically. It'll say, I'm not in the office right now, whatever you typed in for your automatic response. And I can't believe I need to say this, but I need to say this. Never insult anyone in an email. Don't say anything you wouldn't be comfortable with saying in public. Remember, emails are forever, and you don't know who's going to read this thing. Probably more than you expected. Here's a little article about more about the down editing. I think it's pretty straightforward. You can read it if you like. Okay, so now we're going to change direction, talk about PowerPoint. So part of your project, your presentation project, last week we talked about how to video yourself, how to record yourself on Zoom, how to adjust your lighting. I hope everyone's had a chance to experiment with that. If you haven't, you need to do that. Nothing to send in, nothing, no assignment there that you have to reply to. Just play with, experiment with Zoom recording, get your setup. Okay. So this week, we're going to talk about another part of that is your PowerPoint slides. So 5 to 7 PowerPoint slides as part of your presentation project. So yeah, I don't know if anyone here hasn't used PowerPoint by now, maybe so, but here's just a few quick how do you get going. So you start up PowerPoint. PowerPoint is installed on every computer in Cabrillo. You can also install it for free on your own computers. If you need to know how to do that, get a hold of me or anyone in the CTC. So you start up PowerPoint, and for this presentation that I'm asking you to do, we want to keep it extremely simple, okay? So we're just going to go with blank presentation. So when you first start up PowerPoint, it comes up to this screen and just click on the blank. That'll just be blank white, simple, right? And the very first thing it will start off with is the title slide. So as you make your slides, they sort of stack up over here, and this is how you navigate through them. And then this is the main window where you work on your slide. And the title slide is special, it has a special format. This will all be ready for you automatically, where it has the title and subtitle. So you just put your title in there, and if you want to, you can add a subtitle. So let's talk about font sizes when you put your text in there. So there's two cases here. Remember when we talked about presentations last week, we talked about how there's different kinds of presentations. You know, there's pre-recorded ones, there's live ones, and so on. So if you're making a presentation that is going out to people on their own computer screens, you can get away with packing more stuff onto the slide, as I'm doing. And you can get away with as small as, say, 28 point. Well, that's kind of pushing it. You can go up to 32 and 36. You don't really need to go beyond that. But if you're making a presentation, which is not the case for our projects, I'm just letting you know, if you're making a presentation that you're going to have to give in a room on a projecting screen to an audience, it needs to be bigger fonts. It needs to be at least 36 or 40 point, because from the back of the room, you can't see 28 point. All right. So you made your title slide, and now you want to make your next slide. So you just click here, new slide. And if you don't see anything special, there is a little drop-down arrow here where you can change what kind of new slide you want to make. But if you don't do anything special, you just click new slide, you're going to get one like this, where it has a block for a title and then an area for your text or whatever, right? Your content. And you'll just put in your title and then put in your content here. If it's just going to be text and bullet points, which is what we're doing for this presentation, you can just start typing in right here. If you want to change the size of the font, it's just like Word, you know, it has the same context sensitive menu, or you can go up and change the font size on the ribbon. Okay, so now once you've done that, you'll have all your slides stacked up in the navigation pane. And now you want to play your presentation. So you can do it two ways. There's a little icon here in the quick access toolbar up at the top here. You can click that and it'll start playing. Or you can go to the slideshow ribbon And then it has some options here. You can click this one to play from the beginning. And when you do that, it'll go full screen and you might panic. It's like, oh, where's my controls? So just to go through the slides, once you're in full screen mode, you can click the right or down key on your keyboard or the space bar, and that'll just advance to the next slide, right? If you need to go back, like someone's asking you a question or something, then left key or up arrow, go back. For any reason, if you want to get out of the full screen thing, press the escape key, and that'll go back to the before you started playing. Now, a lot of times you may have noticed if I'm in PowerPoint, the application here, I'm just using the previewer in Canvas, but if I'm in the actual PowerPoint application, which we'll do in a bit, a lot of times I don't bother to go into the full screen presentation mode. I'll just leave it here because that way I can flip around slides quickly. Also, to be honest, a lot of times people find mistakes as I'm doing it, and this way I can fix them immediately, right? I'm just right there in PowerPoint. Okay, so after you've looked at your slides and everything's good, you've gone back, fixed everything, whatever, time to save. Quickest way to save is just to click this little anachronistic icon in the quick access bar, floppy disk. You can also go to the file menu, but this is the quickest way. And if you haven't named your file yet, it'll prompt you for a name. Until you've named it, just like Word does with document 1, it just makes presentation 1, 2, 3 as a temporary file name. Okay, so that's the mechanics of using PowerPoint. Here's some tips. Just for now, keep it simple. Black text on white background. If you want to fool around with things, I would say get your presentation done first, just simple. If you want to go back and do some fancy animations or something, that's up to you, not required, but get it done first. Because I can tell you from experience, those are rabbit holes that you can go down for hours and hours and hours. You want to keep the number of slides to a minimum. 1 slide per minute of presentation time is a good rule of thumb. I'll go through this exercise with you. You can use the words read aloud and a stopwatch is a good way to time how long the presentation takes. And then keep the number of words on each slide to a minimum. I have a book that talks about the presentation techniques of Steve Jobs when he was alive. It was amazing how few words he had on each slide. 1, 2, maybe 3 words. That's a real challenge. So I'm giving you this challenge. 10 words max is a good starting place. Challenge yourself to make it less. Don't do what I do. Count my words, even on this one, right? Okay, a few more tips.
10 words per slide.
Yeah, that's your challenge. Believe me, it's going to be a challenge. We're going to go into this in way more detail, and you're going to see that. I'll give you sort of a little heads up here. You're going to see that your slides are not your presentation. You're giving the presentation. Your slides are an aid. They don't have to have all the words that are in your presentation. Ah, well, here's where I'm saying it again anyway. Remember, you're giving the presentation, not your slides. They're just visual aids. They're not your outline verbatim. Please, you don't have to read out your slides. People know how to read. Can't count how many times I've been in meetings with these high-powered CEOs are up there and they're reading me their slides. It's like, dude, I can read your slides. Bullet points. We talked about cliche expressions. Bullet points are cliche. Challenge yourself to do something other than bullet points. Hey, do you notice? I don't have any bullet points. Well, I have a few. But if you look through this one, here's a couple of bullet points. But that's it. I don't have bullet points anywhere else. Yeah, challenge yourself to do something different. All right, any questions on that?
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm doing block letters and I made like a photo of what a block letter should look like. Am I allowed to put that in or
Yeah.
no?
Yeah. I'm just trying to keep it simple right now so that people don't kind of go off the rails and spend, you know, days and days on this.
Okay.
Just text, but yeah, if you have a picture, that's fine. You can put the picture in there.
Are we also allowed to use like the notes section in the PowerPoint so that we could see our own notes?
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe people don't know about that, but for the presenter, you can turn on an option where there's a little section that isn't projected. It isn't put onto Zoom normally, which will show you your own private notes, right? So on each slide, if you want to, you can turn on that feature and a little block will show up at the bottom where you can put in notes. And then when you're presenting, only you see the notes. However, you pretty much need two monitors to make that work, right? Because you want the one monitor where you're presenting from, and then you want the other monitor is what you're sharing to Zoom in this case, right? Otherwise, Zoom will see your private notes. One thing that I've done is I've used my tablet as my notes, right? So I have my main screen and all that stuff, but I keep my notes on my tablet, so just on the side, right? So it's my own thing. I've even used my Kindle for that. Did that answer the question, Elise?
Yeah.
That wasn't me.
Oh, okay. I have to check. It's a little bit difficult. I have to check my computer screen to see who's talking on Zoom. I have my full screen here. That's kind of appropriate.
So what else, sorry, what else could we use besides bullet points? What did you mean exactly?
So like I'm doing, you just plain vanilla text. That's one way of doing it. You can use indentation. You can use a different font, use a different colors, but don't get crazy, right? I mean, I'm feeling like we had a section on writing letters where it mentioned, the textbook mentioned, oh, you know, for emphasis, you can use bullet points and spacing and headers. That's great. It also mentioned, and you can use different colored fonts and it's like, as soon as I tell people that, what I get back is nuts. People go crazy with that stuff. So it makes me hesitant to say, use all these things, right? But you can use italics and underline and bold. But yeah, keep the color changes to a minimum. It can be very effective, but if you have colors all over the place, it just makes it hard to read, right? Hard to follow. So it's a challenge. That's why I'm saying challenge yourself to do something different. There's no obvious answer. And if you want to use bullet points, use them. It's fine. I'm just saying, you mean you must be like me. We're so burnt out on watching all these presentations and all these bullet points, right? Okay, I think we finished that, right? Yeah, we finished that. Okay. So I have more to talk about on the presentation slides. Should I do that now? Yeah, I think I'll do that now, and then we'll finish up with the exam 2 review at the end. So what I'm going to do is minimize Canvas. And bring up a couple of files. Okay, so remember, I think it was 2 weeks ago, you were supposed to do your presentation outline. I know some of you have, but most of you haven't. So in order to proceed from now, you need to have that outline. You need to do your outline because you use your outline to make your slides and to do your presentation, to do the timing and everything, right? So if you haven't done your presentation outline, you got to do it now. And if you remember, there was an example model 1 that you download and then you went in and changed it. So that's what I've done here. So this is my presentation. I'm going to do 1 too. And mine's going to be on commonly confused words because we hadn't covered that yet when I assigned the presentations. So I'm using the sections that were in that template document, introduction, body, conclusion. And I'm trying to use all the techniques that we've learned, you know, to do presentations, asking questions to the audience, using analogies, verbal signposts, all those things. So if you do look through here, you'll see that I'm using those things. There's a verbal signpost, another situation, right? Now let's turn our attention to, those are verbal signposts. Okay, so I have this outline that I've done, but now I need to make my slides. So I'm just going to open PowerPoint and I'm just going to copy all my text and put it in slides, right? Wrong. That would be way too many words and way too many slides, right? Again, your slides just act as sort of your wingman, okay? You're giving the presentation, you're using your outline to give the presentation. And your slides are just highlighting certain particular points, okay? Now, here's a tool that you can use. You can use read aloud. Have you ever used this in Word? So you put your cursor where you want to start, you say read aloud.
Commonly confused words. Introduction. Have you ever heard someone say something and think, wait?
You get the idea. Now, this can be useful when you don't have a person to help you proofread. I mean, ideally, give this to another person to proofread, right? But if you don't have that, you can use the read aloud, number one, as sort of an aid to proofread. It's going to read out the words. It might say a word like, that's not the word. And you'll look like, ooh, I misspelled it or I used the wrong word, right? The second thing you can use this for, see if I can get this all working at the same time. Is you can use the built-in, if you're on Windows, well, it's on everything, but you can use the built-in stopwatch app. Right? I don't know if you saw how I did that, but I just said clock app, brought up the clock app. I clicked on the timer part of that, right? And then you can do the read aloud while you start your timer.
Introduction. Have you ever heard someone say something and think, wait, that isn't the right word, like that's a moot point or the job has great French benefits? Perhaps you have made the same mistake when speaking or writing.
Okay, you get the idea. So what this is going to do is it's going to time out. And the read aloud does a pretty good job. I got to say it's much better in the 2020 version. It does a pretty good job of putting in appropriate pauses and what we would call white space, you know, you're just not talking all the time. So it's a pretty good estimator for how long this is going to take you to say, right? So by doing that and timing it, you can get an idea how long your presentation's taking. How long should it take? Well, the rubric for this is 5 to 7 minutes for this one.
Where did you find that little voice thing?
It's just built into Word. It's on the review.
Oh, what is it called?
So you just go
Oh, read aloud.
in and read aloud. And
Oh,
just-
cool. Thank
you
you.
have to set your cursor where you want to begin, right? And then you say read aloud. Yeah, super useful tool. So you'll time it and you'll figure out it's either too long or too short. So you'll have to adjust it to get it between 5 and 7 minutes, right? For the total thing. I'd also recommend once you get closer, you know, you get your revisions closer, instead of using the read aloud, you just read it aloud because you're going to do it a little bit differently, still time it. The other thing that you can use this for is every minute that goes by should approximately be where you want to do a slide change, right? 1 per minute is a rule of thumb. So you probably want to go, you know, let it read through, and when it gets to around a minute, whatever, wherever it's a good point, I mean, you might have to go up or down, you know, a little less, a little more. But put in a little marker or something that says slide change, right? And from that, you'll be able to decide what you want to go into your slide, right? So I've done that. Here's my PowerPoint. So again, let's see if I can get this all going at once. You work straight off of your outline, right? Straight off your outline, look for those 1 minute markers. And then in all that text, it was in that 1 minute thing, decide what am I gonna put in my slide, right? So the very first slide is the title slide, that kind of doesn't count. And then you're going to introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Dwayne Strong, cabin instructor, blah, blah, blah. That doesn't need a slide. I mean, you could put a slide in if you want, but remember, you got a slide budget, 5 to 7, right? And you're gonna find this challenging to get it down to 5 to 7. So if it doesn't absolutely need a slide, don't put a slide in, right? Okay, so my first slide is just saying, I did the 1-minute marker and add all that stuff. I was like, well, what would be a good visual aid for all this text that I'm saying? And in my particular case, it's not going to be super clear because the whole point of this thing is that you're confusing words that sound similar. That, like in this case, I'm saying that's a mute point when it's supposed to be moot point. So mute and moot sound very similar, and people may not get that again out of just the verbal thing. So I thought that would be a good thing to have on a slide, right? And I'm using a little bit of color here, but not much. That's kind of the idea. That's what I did here. First minute, that's all I have. Second minute, this is all I have. So on and so on. Now, I probably went over the 10 on this one. 10 is just a goal, not written in stone. And then you have your concluding slide. And remember, we said you only really got to do 2 things. Say what you're going to do it, tell them what you did, right? So in the conclusion, you tell them what you did. And often a call to action. So here's my call to action. Fix your confused words. All right, did that make sense? So your assignment, let me get back to my canvas. Your assignment is to back to the assignment. You're going to create your PowerPoint presentation. You're going to use the outline that you created in module 11. Again, if you haven't done it, you need to do that now. Should contain 5 to 7 PowerPoint slides with no more than 10 words on each slide. Again, just use that as kind of a guideline. What they say in the Pirates of the Caribbean movie? It's more of a guideline than a rule. And then you're going to submit that actual PowerPoint file right here, like you've been submitting Word and things like that. It's the same process. There's a submit, upload file, but I want your PowerPoint in this case. All right. Okay. So that's making your slides. Don't go crazy. Don't stress. As you can see, because you have these constraints, often constraints are a good thing. You have these constraints of no more than 7 slides, try to keep it 10 words to a slide. That's going to really constrain your effort. Go crazy on your outline. Slides, don't stress over it. Okay, so it's 10:30. It's time for break. Let's do our and break. Let me use my fancy app here.
So Professor Dwayne,
Yeah.
we're going to present during class, or is it going to be a recording, right?
Recording, yeah. Remember, was it last week? Yeah, it was last week. We talked about how to record yourself on Zoom, how to get your light off. Good, right? And that was something you were supposed to experiment with last week. Your lighting looks pretty good right now. Maybe a little bit strong on the side, but it's fine, right? So
Yeah, I was trying to try it out today. So hopefully I'll get better.
this is fine. This will be fine, right? So yeah, you're gonna record yourself, right? So up till today, it's just recording yourself for fun, right? There's nothing to submit, nothing to get your situation worked out, right? Technically. Now you're adding your PowerPoint slides to the mix. Again, this week, all I need PowerPoint slide to be submitted. And then we're gonna put it all together, right, in week 14. So we got week 13 after this, we'll do more stuff, and then week 14 is where you're gonna record yourself with your slides. And you can do that, yeah, on your own time, whatever. And then, that goes into a discussion group. So all the other students can see it. You're going to pick, I think it's 2 other people's presentations, kind of like we do on the discussions in general. Pick 2 other people's, watch them, and then comment on it, right?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, so break time. Come back when it's 0. Okay. There. All right, we're back. Okay, so that covered email messages and your PowerPoint part of your presentation project. Are there any questions on any of that stuff before we go on to the exam 2 review? Crickets, okay. So this is another CABT exam. Your second one, there'll just be one more after this. And again, these are timed, you only get one shot, so make sure you give yourself, plenty of time, quiet, good time, whatever works for you for taking an exam before you begin, right? If something crazy happens and, you're in the middle of it and, who knows what, just message me and I can restart it for you. There isn't a way that I could figure out how to continue on from where you left off. My only options are to restart it from the beginning. All right, so here's some questions. Let's go through this in class. If you can answer these questions, you can answer the exam questions. That was a hint. So first one, how do you recognize a redundant sentence? So remember, redundancies are things like small in size or red in color. So what would be a strategy to recognize those? Anybody? Nobody? Well, look at two words that are probably right next to each other that kind of say the same thing, like red in color. Like, well, obviously, if it's red, that's about color. Small in size. Small implies size, right? There's a whole bunch of them. We went through a bunch of homework about these. All right, second one. What strategy can you use to tell if a sentence is compound? Anybody got an idea? Do we remember what a compound sentence is?
Is it two independent sentences?
Yes, two independent phrases linked together by a comma and a conjunction, or all the techniques that we've learned, right? So if it's two independent phrases, each independent phrase has to have its own subject and predicate, right? So if you look at a sentence and you see two subjects and two predicates, it's at least compound. It might be compound complex, but it's at least compound, right? All right, what kind of word might help you determine if a sentence is complex? Do we remember what complex sentences are? That's when there's a dependent clause, usually followed by an independent clause. So the words that we see that trigger a dependent clause are those subjugating conjunctions. And there's a list in the reference section. What was the example?
Like because.
Yeah, right, because is probably the most common one. So if you see a sentence and it says because blah, 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 and then there's an independent clause after that, that's your tip off. That's that word that's telling you that's a complex sentence because that word is causing a dependent clause. Under what conditions would an indirect strategy be a better choice than a direct strategy? Do we remember what the indirect writing strategy versus direct writing strategy was about? So the direct strategy is where you come right out and say, your thesis immediately, and then you back it up with your topic sentences. Whereas the indirect strategy is where you sort of warm up to the idea. You start out with your supporting sentences, and then you have your thesis sentence. So what times would it be better to use the indirect strategy rather than the direct strategy? Under what circumstances?
News or like denying somebody.
Right, bad news, basically, right? Any kind of
Yeah.
bad, denying something, denying a claim, or saying, well, we can't do this, or whatever. So it gets you kind of warm the person up to the idea. Another situation would be where you want to give them the fair hearing, right? Where you don't want them to make up their mind just because you said so, right? With your topic statement, you want to give them the data and the background, let them make up their own mind. Which is generally the better choice for business writing, passive voice or active voice? Okay, first of all, do we remember what the passive voice and active voice are? This is where we go back to is it objective or subjective? Does the verb act on the noun, or does the noun act on the verb, right? So is it the doer or the doing? So what was the example that we used? The piano was played by the boy. The boy played the piano, right? So the second one is the active voice. The boy played the piano. The other one was passive voice, was played by the boy, right? So what's usually our better choice, using passive voice or active voice for business writing?
Active?
Yeah, active. Active is usually less words, right? Even in the example I gave, I had to say was played by. I had to add words in there to make it passive. And it's just kind of passive. The active voice is more punchy and it's more concise. All right, next one. In what circumstances would you use a semicolon? When do you use a colon? We know some of these, we've been doing them pretty much every week, right?
When you want to present some examples, you use the colon.
Yeah, so you use the colon when you're following up with a list of examples, one case, right? How about semicolon? What's the one case we've been studying here about semicolon as far as combining or avoiding comma splice or combining independent clauses? Right, you can use a comma and a conjunction, a fanboy, or you can use the semicolon, right, to separate. There were other examples. Use the colon when you're talking about time. Use the colon when you're introducing a quotation. What were some of the other ones with semicolon? Oh, semicolon can be used when you're making a list, but the list itself has commas in it already. The list items have commas, so you need something else, right? You can use a semicolon. All right, next one. Do we use a different process for writing emails versus letters?
Yes.
Yes. What different process would we use?
I guess just the, well, I guess I was thinking like structure.
Well, I mean, that's true, right? We talked about, I gave you pictures, if you recall, back in the business letter one, I had a picture where I had the little talk bubbles showing you the 6 sections of a business letter. An email, it has that to some degree, but as far as the actual writing that goes into the body of your email, there's no difference. We use the same techniques we use for all business writing. We use the 3x3 process. All the techniques we've learned to get rid of wording expressions, long lead-ins, bias language, all those things we've learned, they apply to emails just the same as they apply to any other business writing. So generally speaking, we would say, no, we don't use a different process, right? We use the 3x3 process for writing emails versus letters, although there are some differences. For what reasons do we use bullet lists and headings? Karina knows this.
Number do you?
When do you use bullet lists and headings? What do we use those for?
What did you? I don't know.
You know?
No.
So a couple things, it increases what they call the skim value. So if somebody's just skimming over it, if it's, you have bullet lists, it's much easier for them to get fast skim value out of it. It adds some spacing, breaks things up. Okay, how could you tell if a word is a confused word in a sentence? This one's kind of hard. Because you may have been using the confused word and you thought that's right the whole time. So the best choice is to have someone else proofread it for you. We also, in the reference section, you have that list of commonly confused words. You could look through that list if you had a suspicion, right? What are some strategies for creating parallelism in a sentence? We had a couple of homeworks on this.
No, to ensure the elements with the same function.
Yeah, look at the verbs. Try to have them all use the same ending, excuse me. Like if you're using ing things, try to make the other things have ing at the end. Just make them all kind of match. How can you tell the difference between a long lead-in and a wordy expression? Well, I would say wordy expressions are just that. They're just wordy expressions. The person's just saying a bunch of extra words that they don't need to say. Whereas a long lead-in is that sort of a crutch that people use based on their verbal communication skills, where they're giving themselves some time, right? So they just put things at the beginning. Okay, so if you can answer these questions, you will do good on exam number 2. So exam number 2 has these kinds of questions, and then at the end it has, I think, 3 parts where you have to revise an email, revise a memo, whatever. You have to do some revision where you just use all the things you've learned up till now. Okay. Yeah, so here's my usual warning, like I already mentioned, but I'll mention it again. These are important because they comprise 40% of your grade. You only get one shot. It's timed. If you have accommodations with me, I've already extended your times per accommodation. So make sure that you've got good distraction-free time before you start. Okay. So like I mentioned, true and false multiple choice questions. It's not the entire thing. It's really from module 6 on. And then you have to revise some paragraphs. Compose a business letter and analyze and revise an email. It closes at 9 p.m. because it's supposed to be 3 hours. I doubt it's going to take you 3 hours. That would take you to midnight. Please don't wait that long. And it's open book. So use anything. You can use the internet. You can use the reference section of the module. I would highly suggest that. All the modules, any notes, the textbook, whatever you need. Right? And you got 3 hours minimum to do it. Any questions on that? Any questions on exam 2? Okay, well, since you've got a lot to do this week, right? You've got to do your PowerPoints. You've got to study up and take exam 2. I don't have much else in this module. This is it. So I will be over in the CTC until 2. Get a hold of you there. You can come in. You can call in on the Zoom. If you have any other questions. If you want to experiment with the Zoom recording, you can do that in CTC. There's actually a station here in 507 that you can experiment with. It's got the camera and the whole setup. You can even use your phone. I don't know if you knew this, but you can download the Zoom app on your phone. Not great for doing the presentation with PowerPoint. It can be done, but ooh, that's painful. But you can certainly experiment with your camera settings and your lighting, just using your phone. Okay, any other questions? All right, well, you know how to get a hold of me if you do. See you all later.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.